All right, well, hello everyone. Thank you for coming here tonight. Can everyone see the parent and listening forum slide that's on the screen? Someone just type in the chat that you can see that. That'd be great. All right, that's good. That's enough. Thank you so much. So for the presentation tonight, if you could keep your microphones and your video off, that will help to control some of the streaming limitations and should help with folks who are attempting to follow at home with sign language interpretation. If someone does need that, you can pin Kim Sampson. That's someone that you would be able to see that interpretation as it's coming. So thank you very much for that. So it is streaming both on YouTube and as well in the Google Hangout. So thank you very much. And I'm going to just switch now a couple of things here. Need to keep my audio going here, and I need to go here. Okay. Very good. So thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Tonight is a district presentation, and we are looking to do this for several reasons. We want to, first and foremost, I'm a strong believer in communication and clarification, and I want to make sure that there was certainly some miscommunication and clarification needed. We received several emails from parents, and as I was able to respond to those emails or talk to folks on the phone, I feel that there was definitely a need to communicate this out with more folks. And so there's certainly an interest with all that's going on. There's so much going on, and I truly appreciate having good two-way communication. So I think that's a very important piece of why we're doing this tonight. Obviously, to give a COVID-19 update, both with the town and with the schools, it's just an opportunity for us to speak directly with you tonight, which I think is very important. We're going to talk a little bit about the 2020-21 learning modes of instruction, remote, hybrid, in person, things that we talked about this summer during reopening when we had forums like this over the summer, just to check in and see where we are now with everything that's going on, and certainly react to what Governor Baker has recently released in some of his statements and clarify that. Certainly to address the decision from the district surrounding the remote learning prior to the holidays and try to put that in a little bit better context for everyone so that that decision can be better understood. And also talk about considerations for December. We've definitely listened to some feedback we've received, and we have some ideas, I think, that are going to make the December calendar even better than was originally planned. And then at the end, of course, there's going to be time for any questions that have not been answered from folks that are on the line. So as I alluded to earlier, I collected a lot of data from parents. We had over 800 people respond to the survey, so thank you so much. I hope that this presentation, which is going to be about 40 minutes or so, will capture a lot of information and a lot of the questions that we received. But I do believe that there will be some questions, obviously, that remain. And so we will address those with you as well. I'm just going to double check and make sure my test people are getting audio out there. And yep, it looks like it's going all right. Okay, thank you so much. So as I mentioned, communication is critical, and it's very, very important. We have been speaking about all of these things so often, and I speak about them in public so often at school committee meetings, and I forget sometimes that not everyone is able to tune in and watch those school committee meetings. I know that they're must-see TV, but I know that people are very busy, and there's not always time to watch all of those meetings. And so there is a need for me to revisit communication, and that's why I'm doing this tonight. And we can do this again if people appreciated this type of forum. I'm happy to do this with folks. I certainly want to talk about updates on teaching and learning. We will talk about that tonight a little bit. We could have a separate talk about teaching and learning as we look to continuously improve and navigate this hybrid model, which is new for our teachers, it's new for our students, it's new for our families, this is new for everyone. So there's a lot of questions. This isn't school the way any of us ever did it. And so this is important to talk about. And also to contextualize and provide the district's response to the recent educational related announcements. I had similar forums on Friday with our teachers and wanted to make sure that they knew where the district was, and just to provide some context for those for the district's response to what the governor and the Department of Ed have put out. So we'll certainly cover that tonight as well. So I just wanted to provide some context around the school committee meetings. We received a lot of questions about meetings, and I want to make sure, and I see some areas where we can improve. And honestly, one of the benefits of being virtual right now, there's actually some more options for folks to join and participate if you so choose. So we have our meetings currently are virtual due to the pandemic. They are listed on the school calendar, which I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about, where you can find the links. They are also, the agendas are posted in advance to the town website. We're going to make sure that those get posted in advance in the transcript as well. And the links, there are links on our website to the meeting. So I'm going to show you that specifically where they are. I've made the school committee meeting schedule is now an interactive document. So it's going to have two things in there. It's going to have links to the meetings. As long as we're doing them virtually, I will provide those links. And what I'm doing, in addition to what other folks are doing, NORCAM obviously records and broadcasts all of our meetings live. They take a feed of our meetings and they broadcast live. But in addition to that, I'm also recording those meetings. And that just made me realize I'm not recording this meeting like I should be. So give me one moment. I'm recording it on one system, but let me record it on both just to be extra safe. And so we are posting those links on the website. So you will be able to see when you visit what I'm about to show you, you'll be able to see recordings of past meetings as well as links to the new meetings. There's only a couple of meetings in there at the moment, but I will backfill and then continue to do that moving forward. Few folks asked about the minutes to the meetings. Just procedurally, minutes don't get posted until they're approved at the next meeting. And then sometimes due to all sorts of circumstances, it takes a couple of meetings before minutes get posted, but you're not going to see minutes from one meeting until they've been approved at the next meeting. So those won't be there. But the fact that they're all archived recordings, I think you can get the full context of what's being discussed publicly. So just a reminder to everyone, on our website, there's a little green box. You want to click on that Notify Me, and that's going to bring you to a lot of opportunities to subscribe to different things that are posted on the website. One thing that we're really trying to do with communication, especially given COVID, is that the Blackboard Connects that go home to everyone should be about the most essential communication. And so other things such as community fundraisers or those type of events, signups for different things, that would be the community bulletin board. So you'd want to sign up for community bulletin board to make sure you're notified every time those get updated. And then the Notify Me is going to give you some other important updates for district and school information as well. For school committee meetings in particular, there are the links directly in our calendar. So on our website, there are 4 tabs in the center. If you click on calendar, that brings you to our calendar. This is a Google Calendar that can be downloaded to your phone. It's got the complete schedule for all the cohorts, and it also has the ability to click on the school committee links. And again, while we're in virtual meetings, you'll be able to actually access the meeting through that link. And then on the website, there is also the school committee meeting schedule. And again, when you click on this, this is going to be an interactive document with hyperlinks to the meeting agendas and then also the recordings of the meetings when we're completed. So one of the announcements that we discussed recently that I just wanted to make sure I clarified tonight was that we've added in the concept of a remote snow day this year. This is something that's available for 2020-21 only. And I want to clarify my position, the district's position. I've discussed this with the administrative council and with the school committee. This does not necessarily mean no snow days. I think we all have heard that other argument, right? That we've taken so much away from kids. Why would we take away hot chocolate and building snowmen and all that? And I completely agree with that, and I understand. So that this does not mean there's definitely no snow days. But keep in mind that not all snow days are days when you can build a snowman, right? There are those days that are just sheets of ice on the ground where it's dangerous for our new drivers. There's days when there's a couple of inches of snow and it's pretty bad, but we do a 90-minute delay. Now we can think of that a little bit differently. This is a good tool to have in the tool bag. We could say, instead of everyone chancing driving in and not being sure whether we're going to get snowed in with a late afternoon storm, we'd say this is a remote snow day instead. everybody learns from home. Everybody can start the day at their regularly scheduled time and learn remotely. And those days do not need to be made up in June. So that's why we accepted that idea, but I wanted to clarify that it doesn't necessarily mean a complete transition, but it does mean that we would be able to use this as needed. Another reminder about the influenza vaccine. So all students K to 12, this is per Massachusetts order, need to receive this vaccine prior to December 31st, 2020. So what that means is, and the school's nurses are following up with you, evidence needs to be provided prior to the winter break so that we have this record on file. So this is a real mandate from the state. Students without the vaccination on file will not be permitted to attend school in person in January. So if for some reason you're not able to get that done, you still absolutely can attend remotely, but it is a mandate from the state that this needs to be done. And so the school nurses have been sending that out, and any questions that you have can certainly be followed up with the school nurses. Now, I want to be clear that there are religious and medical exemptions. There is a process for that. You can't just say it. You do have to follow a process. And if you are seeking a religious or medical exemption, you should discuss that with the school nurse and with the building principal as well. And just to quote from the law, no child whose parent or guardian states in writing that vaccination or immunization conflicts with his sincere religious beliefs shall be required to present said physician's certificate in order to be admitted to school. And then it does say, except if there is an emergency or epidemic of disease declared by the Department of Public Health. So again, this would be an influenza outbreak that we would need to consider, where we would have to talk about admitting people who had an exemption. But I just wanted to put this out there. There is this possibility, but we're confident that most folks will take the flu vaccine this year in order to not confuse flu symptoms with other symptoms we're worried with COVID-19. To clarify the Massachusetts travel order, I've received a lot of inquiries about this year. A lot of folks thinking about travel as they're leading into the holiday season. And just to be clear, there are two kinds of tests. There's an antigen test and there's a PCR test. The PCR test, the results are usually a little bit slower to come by, and it's a little bit more involved of a test. That is the test that's required by the state travel order. The travel order actually says that the test needs to be taken prior to leaving the state that you're visiting, or if you come back, you have to do a 14-day quarantine. But you can get the test in Massachusetts when you return, but you're basically in quarantine until you have those results. And so we are applying that in North Reading to anyone who travels, including students in our building. We want to make sure that when people are coming back from those higher risk states, that they are cleared to return. So there are some exemptions, and the nurses will be happy to work on those with you if you're attending a funeral or if you're traveling for school or work. There are some exceptions to that rule, and we certainly will work within the travel order, obviously, for you. But it is very important to do this, to speak with the nurse if you have any questions, and to continue to complete our daily health screener. This has been very, very important information for us to collect. So to be very clear, and we will be sending more about this out, but as we consider travel around Thanksgiving and the holidays, we do hope that everyone is following all of the guidance and recommendations from the CDC, from our local Board of Health. We are encouraging small gatherings, virtual options, limiting your travel, and certainly monitoring the symptoms of yourself and others. So I'm thinking if you do get together with parents and grandparents, which I'm sure folks are looking to do in different ways, you really want to make sure that on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, not only you, but the other folks that you're seeing are letting you know if they're not feeling great. Because if anyone is even close to having any of the signs or symptoms, everybody should stay home when they're sick on Monday or Tuesday, right? We should be very, very cautious when we've been in situations where we've gathered. So we want to remind everyone of that fact as well. More so than ever, stay home when you're sick this year. So I want to speak now a little bit about some of the COVID-19 updates. I wanted to share with you that beginning back in March, before at least a week or maybe 2 weeks before school was even officially out back in March 12th or 13th, Michael Gilberto, our town administrator, was very proactive in bringing together a task force that looked at this issue, talked about what was pending, what was coming down the line, and we've met every single week for a standing meeting, sometimes multiple times a week, with this team. Michael Gilberto, the town administrator, Michael Murphy, the chief of police, Donald Statz, the fire chief, Robert Bracey, the director of public health, and Pamela that, the public health nurse. She's also a Board of Health member. And at different times, there's been other people and key members of that group. But this core group meets weekly. We discuss all of the issues that are happening in the towns and in the schools, and no decisions are made in isolation. I feel very confident that when I'm putting something forward from the school related to health and safety, that our town and our public health department is very clear. And I've presented and worked very closely with our Board of Health as well several times with our reopening plan, and it's been a very collaborative process. So some of the information that's been shared, and I know some of you have seen this publicly available data, but North Reading at this time is in the yellow. Again, the scale and what constitutes being in a color category was recently changed so that there are many less districts in red than are currently in red. But North Reading now is in the yellow with 20.6 the average daily rate, and the relative change is in the higher range. So that's something that we certainly should be aware of and certainly watching. We met as recently as this morning. Some of the most recent and updated data is that North Reading has had 25 positive cases since November 13th. So in the last handful of days, we've seen 25 positive cases. We're currently monitoring 41 additional cases. And nationally, Mr. Bracey shared with me that there's an average of 145,000 cases per day and 1 million cases in the last week. So certainly an uptick, and we certainly want to be as cautious as ever with this pandemic and COVID-19. So what can we do at the school level, right? So completing our daily health screener. Thank you to all of you for doing that every single day. The daily health screener serves as a reminder. It's another layer of self-reporting. Okay, this is not something that we are able to analyze every single person and make sure that everyone's filled it out every day. We don't let them on campus. That is an exhaustive task. But what it does is it alerts our nurses, alerts our administration to anyone that has any questions, and we're making sure that we're following up. It's been very, very effective. And it does make everyone think twice about coming into the building if they're having any of these symptoms. And it's been very effective, so please keep that up. That's been wonderful. We have had positive cases in our schools. We've had 6 student cases, 5 staff cases. My procedure is to email the entire district, all of the parents, whenever a staff member or student tests positive. And hopefully my intention is to let you know that all the close contacts have already been contacted so that you're not worried. Sometimes I've had to, and especially with the first one, it was a little bit tricky, and I wanted to make sure I got the information out, but I didn't want to cause any anxiety to anyone. So we got very positive feedback on that over communication, and so we've kept doing that as well. I want to make sure that every time there's a staff or a student who's tested positive, that we will communicate that. So I will be communicating another one from today. We have a 7th student. That student has not been in school, so there's no risk of close contact at school, but I will be communicating that. And I do report all of these cases, both staff and student, to the Department of Education. And there is a tally that's kept there as well. To date, I do not feel that there has been transmission at school. And I think that's very important. And just to clarify, because I do get asked this question from time to time, we have to be very careful with personally identifiable information. So when I'm able to go and get as granular as the grade level, I'm able to do so. But there are some instances where I can't, where we feel that might then lead to a personally identifiable information. And so we need to pull back a little bit from that. But whenever possible, I try to make it clear what school and what grade so that others can be aware, but not overly concerned that it's directly impacting them at the moment. What folks may not fully understand, and what might help you understand some of what we're going to describe later, there is a process for close contacts. So a close contact is defined as someone who is within 6 feet for 15 minutes, and that's a total amount of time of 15 minutes. And we usually are looking back when we're tracing over, we go back 2 days from when the person is in their period where they could be infecting others. So we're asking the question, were you within 6 feet for a total of 15 minutes? So if you're with someone for 7 minutes and then you're with them later for 8 minutes, that's a total of 15 minutes. So that's what we use to determine close contact. Our students, as you recall, are at 6 feet distance from each other, but because they're at that 6 foot, we do include them as close contacts. They're right at the threshold, and we do consider them to be close contacts. It's important to note that the close contact of a close contact does not need to quarantine. And that often is the main question that we receive. And so we were able to explain that to folks. So when someone finds out, for example, that they need to quarantine because their cousin in another town tested positive, that student has to quarantine, but the rest of that student's close contacts in the classroom do not need to quarantine. The quarantine periods are 14 days. Students and staff are able to continue learning in remote. Many staff have taught in remote. The entire cohort does not need to go into quarantine. The entire class does not need to go into quarantine. We have had situations where the teacher has gone and started teaching remotely. The students who are in close contacts are home and learning remotely. And the other half of the classroom is continuing in the class with the teacher on the smart board and a substitute in the room. And it's really gone well. I've been in the room with the principals on 2 occasions where we've done this, and it's worked very well thanks to the adjustments of all stakeholders, parents, students, and teachers to make that adjustment. So it's been very productive despite the circumstances. So to speak a little bit about our models for 2020 and 21, there's 3 different models that we're considering throughout the year: full remote, full in-person, and hybrid. Full remote is everybody, teachers, students, parents, everyone is home in full remote. Full in-person obviously means all the students back in person every day. And then there's a lot of different models for hybrid. And so I want to clarify what our model is and why I had said in a previous email this week that the model that we have, I'm confident, is one that the Department of Education feels is a superior model. Some of the hybrid models have full days where students attend some days for a full day and then other days in remote. There are some that are a half-day model where students attend every day for half a day, and then they go home and they have another half of the day in remote. Then there's the week on, week off model where students attend for a full week in person, and then they attend 1 full week in remote. And we talked about all the pros and cons of these various different models over the course of the summer, and looked at our spaces and our resources, and all of that led to going with that full day model. So the model that we have is a 2 on, 2 off. We have a 3 on, 2 off alternating week model. So many districts went with a 2 on, 2 off model. So you're either in Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday, and the whole district is asynchronous on Wednesday. And what that often looks like is there are assignments posted online and students are completing assignments on their own on Wednesdays. So when I say that we are a 3 on, 2 off, what that means is each cohort, A or B, is in for 3 days one week and then 2 days the next week, but they are there on that Wednesday. Now, to be clear, and I didn't make this clear enough, and I apologize for that, I do want to acknowledge that the elementary does have a half day on every Wednesday. That's different at 6 to 12. The reason why that difference exists, if you were to look at the times of the schedule for this year, our middle school and high school schedules are shorter than a typical school year. And that's because we were able to build in the collaboration periods for the teachers. Teachers are being asked to do a lot of different things this year. So we built in the collaboration time so that they could plan how they're going to reach not only the students in front of them, but also the students in remote. That was built into their schedule and some time was deducted. But the way that works at elementary, because our specialists, art, music, phys ed, they provide the support to provide those breaks for the teachers to collaborate. The only way that we were able to do this was to use that half day on Wednesday. So the elementary schools, their time for the 4 days, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, is very close to their typical school calendar schedule in a typical year. And then Wednesdays are a little bit shorter. This also leads to the question that I've received about the elementary specialists and why the elementary specialists are not going live. That's because they are being used full time to be in the buildings and delivering lessons in the building. So that's something we can continue to talk about and look to improve, but the schedule is driving some of that difference with the elementary specialists. Our model also allowed us to have kindergarten 5 days per week in person, again, half days on Wednesdays. One thing that's very different in our district from a lot of other districts is that we have only about 7% of the students opting for full remote. There are some districts where there's upwards of 20% of students in full remote, which completely changes what's possible as far as getting more students back in the school and also a different way of approaching remote teaching and learning with having dedicated teachers to remote. But with only 7% of the students, we didn't have enough remote learning positions to structure it a different way. What our model does offer that we're very confident in is that all electives and courses were able to be offered. Students have the same teachers, the same AP courses, the same elementary electives, the same middle school classes that they would have had in a typical year. It just looks a little different, but they have the same courses, and all of the teachers teaching those courses are teaching in their areas of expertise. We did not have to take our drama teacher and have her teach math, or a science teacher trying to teach phys ed. Everyone was able to work in their areas of expertise, which we think we preserved, and we very much were happy with that, how that worked out. And it is easy to pivot to full remote or full in person when it's feasible. So again, we don't have to change and reassign everything to those students that are looking to return. When we're able to return to full in person, we will just be able to have more seats in the classroom and more students in the building. Now, I will say that for this year, and I'll say this a few times, we will continue to offer a remote model for those this year that continue to want the remote model, no matter what we do. And there may need to be a revisiting of that model if we are bringing all students back. But that's only if and when we decide to make a change. Right now, that is not being discussed, but I wanted to clarify that as well. A few of the other pieces to consider with the full day model. Our teachers are teaching students who are in person, who are in their hybrid remote, and also in their full remote. And they're juggling all three of those. And they took that on for the benefit of all of our students. In order to get those things that I just shared with you and all of those benefits, our teachers are doing all three of these. This was a very big challenge. This was a big discussion. We had a lot of conversations this summer and a lot of professional development to support it. Our teachers are doing an amazing job. They are absolutely overwhelmed on different days with some of the challenges that they face, but they're doing an incredible job to do this job. When you say that people, you sign up for a certain job and you're asked to do another one, this is, in some ways, you could view this as twice, if not three times the work. But the way we've approached it by saying, what is the best way to teach students in remote? What does that look like? And then have the ability to have the benefit of having students in front of you. We kind of flipped the whole model on its head. Instead of saying you have to teach kids in class and at home, we said, what's the best way to teach kids remotely? And then also, how can we work with students in front of us? That's certainly easier at the secondary level than it is at the elementary. And my hats are off to our elementary people who are doing an absolutely incredible job, and to our teachers union for really working with us to approach this to give the best for our students. Challenges include also the coordination of all services, the coordination of planning time and collaboration, and certainly schedule changes and adjustments. So I understand now, as many of you have expressed, the Batchelder School is earlier. We didn't feel it was so early that it was untenable, but it's definitely a challenge to families, and it's a different kind of time and schedule. But all of those things needed to happen so that we could make the busing work and all of our schedules work. So I get this question a lot: what would lead us back into full remote? So sort of going the opposite direction of hybrid. That would certainly be the number of cases within a school or a district. So if we have too many students to be able to safely open the building that are testing positive, we would have a rapid response. Quite honestly, if we see 2 or 3 students within the same classroom, I'm going to be calling the mobile response unit, and we would start testing all the students in that classroom, possibly all the students in the school, with those rapid tests. So this is where those rapid antigen tests come in very handy as opposed to the PCR. The rapid tests give us the information we need right away to determine whether students are positive and there's an outbreak, and we were able to contain it. That's where we would be calling in that rapid response team. And worst case scenario, we could shut the school or the district maybe for a day, maybe for a few days, not necessarily for 14 days. But we have seen that in other districts where there's been an outbreak or an uptick and we've had to close. Obviously, we've also seen, and hopefully, again, as a great reminder, this won't happen in North Reading, but if we have an inability to trace close contacts. So the example I think of is there's a high school party off campus, there's 50 kids there, and 2 or 3 of them test positive, but we don't know who was there, we don't know how many kids could have been exposed, could be positive. We can't do any proper contact tracing. I believe that the Board of Health would agree, and they've shared with us, the Director of Public Health, that this would be a situation where we would probably need to consider having a closure of a school because we are unable to safely determine whether there are close contacts that have been told to quarantine. And then obviously the third reason would be if we have insufficient staff for any reason to safely open buildings. So obviously if we don't have enough adults to safely receive the students, then we would have an issue. So what happened on November 6th? So in the morning, we sent out an announcement to everyone about our thoughts for the holiday. And then later that day, we were surprised there was sort of an emergency call with the Department of Ed to give us a heads up that the governor was going to make a press conference that shared some information that I think needs some clarification. Whether you're aware of it or not, there are still many, many districts that are in full remote, many districts that are in different forms of hybrid that are not going at least 5 days a week. And in all honesty, I believe that that is more the districts that the governor and the Department of Ed are trying to address and asked to prioritize in-person learning. But what they said was districts should prioritize in-person learning across all color-coded categories, and they should be returning to full in-person if feasible. Again, what was happening is the thresholds that were set up on the old color-coded map had many, many, many districts in red, and many districts were closing once they got to red. And so the clarification is we clarified with folks here, if we were in red and did not see a transmission in school, we wouldn't necessarily close. But they take.
I'm sorry, can you remind all parents to shut their cameras off? Somebody's giving someone a bath.
Yes, please, everyone should please turn all your cameras off. Microphones should be off and cameras should be off. Thank you. So I just want to emphasize here that we're prioritizing in-person learning and that very, very key phrase there, if feasible, and what that means to be feasible. And when I say that from all the conferences I've sat in with the commissioner, I feel that if they were to come out and look at the North Reading plan, they would see that we are doing absolutely everything we can to fit as many students in at a 6-foot distance. We'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. So the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, very clearly has said students must be at least 6 feet apart. They have to be placed in learning stations 6 feet. When we're on the buses, when we're in the hallways, we are 6 feet apart. All of our schools right now, not only are the classrooms at 6 feet distance, all of the common spaces, we have 50% less students in the building. So we're able to maintain that 6-foot distance in the hallways. It's really, really a testament to our administrators and our teachers who are more visible in the hallways, I think, that I've ever seen, doing a fantastic job of making sure the students, as they're walking through the building, are walking on the arrows that are on the floor and maintaining their social distancing at all times. Kids have been fantastic. They've been so respectful, so polite, wearing their masks, taking mask breaks as needed, but really the compliance, and everyone is in this because all the students really want to be in school, and it's working very, very well. What the Department of Education put out over the summer, sort of in the 11th hour, later in the summer, was this idea that, and the WHO actually said this, as well as the Pediatrics Association, the American Association, as well as Massachusetts, that you could have 3 feet apart. And this is how it was stated, though, at least 3 feet and ideally 6 feet. So it wasn't clear evidence that 3 feet was the new 6 feet. It was, we're still recommending 6, but you probably could get away with 3. That's the essence of what was shared. And that really wasn't convincing enough for our teachers, for our local Board of Health. Everyone that came and viewed the 3-foot setup said they're much more comfortable with 6 foot, and that's what got approved. And we did have the move to the hybrid model, honestly, in large part because of our commitment to 6 feet. So the question really is, what has changed at this point with the governor's order? And honestly, there's still not a lot of change to be convincing around the science with changing this. There is not a lot of transmission in school, and we're very thankful for that. But I'm very confident that a good reason why there's not a lot of transmission in school is our students are 6 feet apart with masks, following all the rules and following all these procedures. Why do we want to rush this and test it out? So that's the question. But I did ask in the survey, just to get a sense, without all of this information, by the way, about close contacts and quarantining, but just a sense where our parents felt about returning to school. And let me just say here, if I haven't said it a million times, we all want our students back. We all want this pandemic to be over. We all want to have every teacher, every administrator, every parent, every student wants it to go back to normal. But we need to do that when it's safe. Parents are divided. So the question of, this is about 800 or so people. I watched this come in, and it was certainly going back and forth, but always hovering right around between 60-40. This snapshot I took was 56% versus 43%. So 56% saying let's stay the course, let's remain with the 6 foot, and 43% saying bringing students back at 3 foot of distance, at 100% capacity. And the qualitative comments, the narratives were quite, as you can imagine, quite the spectrum, right? From everyone saying, let's bring them back and let's see what happens, to why would we ever consider doing anything that could put children in any more harm. So there's passionate feelings on both sides, and I think that's very important, because when we do talk about listening to parents and listening to constituents, you can see, welcome to my job, where you can never make everyone happy with the decision, but you need to do what is in my heart and what I know and what the administrative council and what the school committee knows is best for kids. And in some cases, it might feel like a step backwards, but we're always keeping our move forward. What is the ultimate goal? If we bring back too many kids and now everybody has to go out for multiple weeks, that's not getting to our main goal. So that's what our thinking is here. The other question, I want to be very clear with this question, is about the busing. So the busing regulations have not changed. So even if we were able to bring students back at 3 foot, we would not be able to bus all the students to school. So we would have to come up with a way to have about half the number of students, again, because you'd be bringing 2 cohorts together. And most likely the way we would do that, the ones that we legally have to bus would be the ones to be bused. So please don't take this. There were some comments about, I've already paid a bus fee and what would happen. This isn't being considered. I'm just putting this forward as just to see where we are. And it's pretty clear. This was most of the time closer to 70-30, but when I took the snapshot and where it is now, it's more like 60-40 again. But people are very concerned that they would not want to only have students who are within grades K to 6 and live more than 2 miles away to take the bus. And the orange and the blue are combined, by the way, there. So where do we stand as a district? The district believes and follows, so the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, I think, has articulated this very well, and I wanted to share this with you, and I do have a little bit more of a memo to share out that I will share out after tonight, but I'm just going to share this with you. While superintendents have been strong advocates for as much in-school learning as possible, there are several realities which require the governor's help before many months of planning can be altered. Number one, convincing evidence that at least 6 feet of distance is safe. We need medical experts to explicitly coalesce around safe distancing, which allows for increased student capacity in classrooms. So again, if the medical community can come together around this and be more convincing than saying, yeah, 3, but preferably 6, then I think we could consider that as well. School bus transportation must allow for significantly larger student bus capacity. We're limited right now with bus availability and the significant cost to expand bus usage. And the third is that we need help with collective bargaining provisions, since there's no way that we can make a unilateral change in previous agreements with the local unions. Superintendents have already negotiated extensively on return to school plans. So I want to be very clear about that last bullet as well. There is no taking sides. I've heard it presented as, well, the governor said this, and the Teachers Association at the state level said that. Where does the district stand? Whose side are you on? And I just want to make it very clear, it's an infinitely more complex issue than that. So first of all of this, the Association of Superintendents feel very strongly, as what I just shared with you there. That's the joint statement from there. I'm also involved in many smaller groups, including the Merrimack Valley Superintendents Association, which brings together 30 or 40 superintendents of local areas. And we're all in the same position where we all want to bring our students back, but we want to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's safe. And I just want to share with you, these are all the unions and associations in North Reading: the Education Association, the Federation of Paraprofessionals, the custodians, food service, administrative assistants, and our Unit B administrators. Let me tell you how fantastic and reasonable they have been through all of this. We have not had many of the conversations or many of the issues that any of our other districts, that many other districts have had, because how reasonable they are. and great to work with. I need to thank, Michael Connolly and our Director of Facilities, Wayne Hardacre, over the summer, and Sonny Campagna, who made our custodial team come together with the best equipment, and the way we spent our money to buy ionizers for the buildings and other equipment for ventilation. Our buildings are safe, and the town and the community for investing in new schools certainly made all of this come together and coalesce really well for North Reading. But I want to be very clear that our unions are committed, and here every day we have all of our teachers working as hard as they've ever worked before. And so there's no taking sides in this. We're all on the side of the kids, and we're only going to do what's smart and what's safe. That said, so just to be clear, we are not looking to bring anyone back immediately in response to what the governor said. That said, we are taking immediate actions. These actions have been in place. We've been having this conversation. We sort of got over the first hump of reopening and getting involved. The principals and I have been meeting to talk about specifically who is most in need of support during remote learning. And so we're identifying those students who are struggling for a variety of reasons and trying to find ways to get them back. So it might not be bringing everybody back, but it might be bringing back those students who are most in need and helping them to get back into the classroom. We're thinking also what can be done creatively. So we've got some great ideas that are out there, whether it's some kind of remote learning assistance that's guided by the schools to help out in some situations. It might be something that we do after school, because there are some students that just need that motivation of a live connection with a teacher to make it through the day, or to make those assignments make sense. So we're going to think about what can we do after school? How can we make some connections? So we're really trying to figure out how to do this and how we afford this, but obviously we're being very creative and trying to think of this together. And then finally, as we're still in hybrid, what can be done to support all students and improve that hybrid education? Professional development, support, and feedback. I received great feedback from the parents here through our survey that we're going to be sharing to continuously improve what we're able to offer as a product for all of our students. I think it's very important to communicate here as well about grades. A lot of you asked in the forum feedback, how are our students doing? Are we experiencing that regression? Are students on pace to learn? How are we compared to other states, other countries around the world? And I can say with clarity that I would absolutely be hearing from our teachers if they felt that what happened in the spring and where they are now, the students were way behind. And I'm not hearing that at all. I get to observe classrooms in many different ways. I've been able to observe classrooms in person. And in the last week or so, I've been able to get into classrooms in remote. And in many, many cases, I will say that those students are doing almost exactly what they'd be doing in class as what they're doing at home. They're absolutely being kept up to speed. I won't say it's close to 100%. It is not. It's probably closer to 80, 85%. That said, what our teachers have done is they've prioritized what the most important things are, what can be removed from the curriculum, and we're moving forward. And our students are achieving, and we're doing a great job at that. It is not perfect. It is far from perfect. And in many situations, it's not working well at all. And we're well aware of that. However, we are not hearing that students are third graders are more behind than they've ever been. We're not hearing statements like that. And I know that we would be hearing that if that were the case. And we have, standardized assessments to measure where students are. And we have teachers that are comparing where students are this year to where other cohorts have been in the past. And we're collecting all that information. And so far, again, not perfect, but we're heading in the right direction. But I want to implore to parents, as grades and as report cards and everything come out, grades are about communication. The purpose of a grade is to show a student where they are with respect to the learning standards that they're supposed to be getting for that grade. That's the purpose of a grade. And it is imperative in this year that your children understand that if they're struggling, a large part of that is that it could be the scenario that they're finding themselves in. Remote learning in any way, hybrid, remote, is a challenge. And so if the grades aren't where they should be or where they usually are, it's important for the teachers and also for the parents to communicate to those students to keep in mind the context of their learning this year. And that communication, we can't just do a curve that everyone, gets their grade inflated so that it looks a little bit better. But if the grades aren't quite where they need to be, the grades need to show you where you are against the standards. And from there, we need to make sure that students understand, hey, we're learning this in context. And I was at the Hood School today with Dr. McKay, and he really helped me to see a great point, which was the most important thing this year, above all else, above all the academics, is the social emotional wellness of our students. If those students are getting that connection to school, which was so lacking in the spring when we weren't together at all, if those students are able to make those connections, that is the most important thing. And if we can get that right and coalesce around that, the academics will follow. And I'm confident in that, and that's really what our immediate actions are. So I want to shift to the last part here and talk a little bit about the 2020-21 calendar. So a lot of the emphasis this year has been around flexibility. So as you may be aware, we had our calendar this year, and similar to what we had to do last spring, we had to make some adjustments and some changes over time. Flexibility is key, and we want to share with you that there's flexibility because we've never been in a school year like this. The school calendar is built upon having breaks in February and in April on a typical school year. We've never had an experience of the feelings, the stress, the anxiety, the multiple different ways of learning, the fatigue of being on a screen all day. All those things are different. So we have to examine different ways to give breaks. The postponed days, we had 2 half days on September 25th and October 9th. Those were postponed. The secondary did use one of their half days on October 14th because we realized that was a way to have the SAT. We also have, this year, we have an additional 3 half days and 1 full day, which are to be determined. And so we need to look at the schedule and figure it out. Right now, that full day, for example, is at the end of the year. But if there's no MCAS test this year and that landscape has changed, we may want to revisit and use some professional development in the middle of the year. So we do ask for that flexibility. Obviously, we need to be very reasonable in providing these changes and notices. I know for this last announcement, there was about 2 weeks heads up, and that certainly wasn't enough. And that was a miscalculation. And I'm more than willing to admit that. Both teachers and parents have said, please, whatever it is, the more notice we get, the better as the base. With any changes that we make, we want to maintain that balance of the cohort. So that absolutely will happen. You may not notice it immediately, but we will balance those cohorts. The cohorts at the elementary level is balancing A and B. At the high school level, not only do you have to balance A and B, but you also have green days and gold days. Students have different classes on green days and gold days, and we've worked it out so that there's a balance, almost, I think it's 1 day off in the whole year where students have the correct number of green and gold days in person. So we are very much committed to having that balance, and we will continue to do so. It just may take a little time for that to be adjusted. It might be adjusted in a week in January or something like that. But that's very important. But it is important to us to continue to provide those breaks as needed. So just to bring you up to speed with where we came to this decision around the holiday remote learning. We did a listening tour with our staff. We received many parent emails concerned about holidays and transitions to holidays. We brought the suggestion to the school committee on October 19th in a public meeting. I brought the idea back to, so I had this idea. It was suggested to me during a listening tour with staff. A staff member suggested, would you consider the benefits of having those days not canceled, but in remote on those few days, the Monday to Tuesday and the half day Wednesday leading into Thanksgiving. And the more that we did thinking about this, the more that this seemed like an idea. Honestly, I was hearing from teachers and from administrators that staff were getting burnt out. Our nurses absolutely were feeling burnt out. They've been working, our nurses have been coming together every weekend since early October to come around and to coalesce around the close contact tracing calls. And so I was very aware of all the work that many of our folks have been doing. And so we thought this idea, we brought it to the public meeting. I brought it to the NREA, to the paraprofessional unions. I brought it to the administrators, and everybody seemed to think this was a good idea. Now, what's missing there? I didn't bring it directly to parents, and I admit that is something I certainly want to improve upon. Hence, one of the main drivers for having a forum like this tonight. And the feedback we've already received has helped us, improve, I believe, and shape what we're looking at for December. We had a second public meeting on November 5th, where this was adopted by the school committee, and I shared it out the morning of the 6th. Again, we felt there were 2 weeks to prepare, which is not a lot, but it does give some time. It's not like it has to happen tomorrow, so we do have time to come together around that. There is certainly an additional burden on 50% of the families. Families who thought that their children would be in school on those days now have to provide care for those children, especially at the elementary level where the students need that extra support. Even more so, this will be the first time in the entire year where the kindergarten and the cohort C students are in remote, unless they elected to do so because they weren't feeling well. Those students were there. We've also had some kindergarten classes that have transitioned well because of a COVID situation, but for the most part, they haven't done that. So there was certainly, a learning curve there as well. So what were some of the considerations that we had? So again, there were many communications from parents as well as staff around why aren't we taking days off? And I heard this certainly even in the feedback that I received the other day. Why aren't we taking more time around Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving? So a couple of things to be very clear on. The only way to guarantee that anyone's not going to be a carrier of COVID is a full 14-day quarantine where you're not leaving your house. That's the only way to do that at that time. Now, certainly less time than that is, if you do it for 7 days, it's 50% chance, right? Or something thereabouts. But the idea is the Department of Education explicitly came out as this was being discussed. Many superintendents were discussing closing around the holidays. They explicitly said you cannot close for 2 weeks or any period of time following the holidays as people transition back. So they were very clear about that with us. As I mentioned before, very high levels of anxiety. We're seeing an uptick in cases, and it's not just the positive cases, it's also all the close contacts. Teachers and staff are very concerned about bringing, anything home to their families, as are our students as well. So we certainly knew that, 50% of the students would be impacted by these 2.5 days. We also know that there was an issue with the balance of the remote cohorts, an additional burden for families. And I do want to mention again, when we get to December, to talk about, the recommendations we took forward to improve that calendar. But this is the idea behind the holiday remote learning. So if you think back to what I said earlier about the contact tracing, we do not believe, and we're going to be very clear, this is not to allow people more ability to travel. That is not the purpose. Now, someone may take advantage of that because they can do remote from somewhere. That's their choice. But the idea of this is that everybody now has the ability to quarantine and not mix and not come to school where there have been positive cases moving into the holidays. If you are going to get together with a parent or a grandparent, you now know that if you are not going to get a call on Thursday or on Friday morning that, oh, by the way, someone in your class on Wednesday tested positive, and now you were a close contact, should have been in quarantine, but spent Thursday with your mother and grandmother. That's what we're trying to avoid. It also avoids me having to call the nurses on Thanksgiving Day and say we need to do some contact tracing. So to put this all in perspective, I hope you can see that this was not meant to prevent the spread in that way. It was meant to lessen the anxiety, and as we said, provide additional flexibility for everyone's choices. If you are going to get together with family, you now know that you have had that ability to quarantine at home from Friday. You did not have to come into work, but you still did not miss learning because you did remote learning, just like everyone else is doing in all the other grades on their remote learning days. That was the logic. I know very clearly that's not going to please everybody, and not everyone's going to understand that or agree with it, but I do hope that the communication of the thinking behind this is helpful. So this did lead to some different thoughts around December. So we are still thinking of doing something different, those 2.5 days, Monday, Tuesday, and a half day, Wednesday, leading into December. To show you what was presented to me from a very thoughtful email from a parent, it was pointed out that at the elementary schedule, we have a half day on December 11th for professional development. We have 3 elementary conference half days on the 16th, 17th, and 18th. And so in the revised plan that we're going to, we can discuss, and I'll get some more feedback from parents, and we'll discuss it at school committee. We would now, following Thanksgiving, we would have 3 full 5-day weeks. We'd have 2 days of remote learning, which are half days, the 21st and the 22nd. And then the other half of those days would be the conference days. So we're combining that. We're actually eliminating the number of days students aren't in class. And then we would have, from a student and parent point of view, it would be 1 extra full day of winter break. So instead of doing a half day on the 23rd in the morning, that would be a full day off for the students, and that would be the time when the staff would do that professional development half day. So we'd be moving things around, but it would basically give 3 full weeks of 5 days in school, which is certainly what everyone wants. And those two remote learning half days for elementary and 1 full day of winter break. For the secondary level, it looks a little bit differently. They don't have all the conferences. So really, instead of just the professional development half day, you would have the 3 full 5-day weeks, 2 full remote learning days in 12/21 and 12/22, and 1 extra full day of winter break on 12/23. That's what that would look like. And remember that the secondary level has different conferences and different schedules, but this is the December schedule. Just to be clear also on the Thanksgiving return question, we also believe that, as I mentioned earlier, on Thursday, you now have multiple days to figure out whether you or anyone else has symptoms from any visits on Thursday and make the best decisions before you return to school on Monday. And if anyone is feeling sick or was with someone who is feeling sick, you should be staying home. So again, it's a very different reason for why we were looking to have those remote holidays, and we think it's a good reason for our staff, and we want to preserve that going into the winter as well, but we are open certainly to feedback on that. So I know that I've gone a little bit over here. I did start a little later. As I mentioned, I will stay until all the questions have been answered, but I did get such great feedback from you. I worked a lot into this presentation to try to answer them. So just a few of the rules for the chat, some norms that I think would be very helpful. The way this has worked very well, there's a lot of people. You would enter your name in the chat, and I will call on you if you'd like to ask a question or make a statement. Please assume positive intent. I know that there's a lot of frustration, but please know that the school committee, the administrators, the teachers, everyone is working for the best interest of our students and want our students back in person as much as possible. Please do not include any personal identifying information. Please don't speak directly about a principal by name or a teacher by name or a student by name. Please limit your questions to 1 per person until all the questions have been addressed. And if there are previously answered questions, I will gently remind folks that it's been answered earlier in the presentation and it's been recorded so that we can move on to other questions if there's nothing new for me to add. And there are also some other leaders here tonight. I saw Michael Gilberto on the call. There are some others as well, some of whom wear multiple hats as parent and also school leaders or town leaders. And some are here just to support and to hear the conversation. So they may be sharing as well. So again, the folks that are on the YouTube stream won't be able to do this, but the first 250 people certainly can begin to answer some questions. So I'm going to just switch over and allow some questions at this time. So I'm going to just back up here and see. So Ms. Genova, about snow days. So I will answer this question. The question is, okay, go ahead, sir.
Back up here. Let's see.
So I can read this. This question's written in if you want me to read it, or do you want to speak it?
So, Ms. Genova, about snow days?
So everyone needs to mute their microphones. I think we're hearing an echo. So we want to make sure you muted your microphone unless I call on you.
I'm not sure if you want me to talk. So my daughter actually came home with a snow day folder today with just a couple of pages of work for each day. And I'm just curious if this is just all she's going to be doing on the snow days, or is there going to be like some synchronous teaching as well, or is it just expected that 3 to 4 pages per day that'll probably take her like an hour is all she's going to do that day?
Yeah, so we will work with the teachers to clarify. I think folks are trying to be out ahead of all this and try to clarify, but that's more of the quote unquote blizzard bag concept. And so, I'm going to work with the teachers and the principals to clarify that. That's a good backup plan if something's needed, if there's a power outage or we're not able to do it. But truly, if we're doing a remote day, there's going to be aspects of synchronous teaching. And we have been working on a schedule that will be shared out with everyone. And I ultimately think in the long run, the days that we're talking about before Thanksgiving is going to give us a time to prepare and to practice for what could happen if there was a need for for a remote day due to COVID quarantine or due to a snow day. So that's it would not be asynchronous kind of worksheets. That is not the main plan.
Great, thank you. I'm
Yep.
glad to hear that. It was confusing just to get that coming home, and I'll be glad to know there'll be some synchronous teaching as well.
Yes, and again, whenever we're doing remote, we're not on the computer the entire day. But what we're doing there is we are checking in throughout the day and having some live teaching. So that is the plan. And no fault at all to any teacher that did that proactively. Everyone's trying to do what's best, and we will clarify that as well. People who had out-of-town visitors should, certainly if you're coming into contact with anyone over the holidays, you need to make sure that you're monitoring symptoms and following all the guidance. We can't prevent folks from gathering, but we can provide all the information and safety. And you really should be very, very clear to any guest that if they experience any symptoms, to let you know right away, because if it could be COVID, you need to stay home and get tested. And you can talk to the school nurse if you have a question, and many others. So please take all necessary precautions. So 11 cases in total out of how many staff and students? So about 2,500 students and about 350 staff. So it's not a lot, but it's, even one is scary. All right, trying to see here where there's a question. You just see there's a lot of comments in the chat. I think they were already in there. So I'm just trying to get to some questions. All right, I might just scroll down to the bottom where some folks may have said it. So Brandy Negron, could you just ask your question?
Sorry, yeah, I just have a question in terms of the social emotional learning and if it's being connected directly to COVID or to remote learning, or is it the kind of same curriculum that it has been in years past?
That's a great point. I think it certainly is. It certainly is directly related to COVID. We spent a lot of time this summer working with our counselors at every school to talk about that. It's actually addressed in our reopening plan as well, directly how our counseling service would work with social emotional related to COVID. And I think you're going to see some specific presentations for families coming soon. I don't want to steal the thunder, but some of our parent groups and school administrators have been working very hard on some COVID specific related supports for families, which I think is going to be great. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Thank you for this forum tonight. This has been great. I want to ask a question about Google Classroom.
Yep.
Remote learning is what makes this whole model possible. Everything that you're keeping in balance right now, whether people are hybrid or full-time remote. So given that, has the district investigated alternatives to Google Classroom? There are lots of systems that are established that are, frankly, just better designed and could better support teachers and students and thus parents. And the follow-up question to that is, if we're committed to Google Classroom, can you just briefly describe any efforts that are currently underway to optimize workflows and any teacher training, stuff like that? And thank you very much.
So great question. Our training has been around the system, the Google Classroom system. I think it's, every system that's out there, every learning management system has pros and cons. There are programs that are, there are pluses and minuses to a lot of different programs. And I don't want to debate everything. We're also using Seesaw with the elementary school grades here. We felt from what we've investigated, the Google Classroom had just as much to offer, and we were using that quite extensively anyway. So this isn't something we pivoted to just because of the situation that we're in. We were already invested in it. Our training has been in Google Classroom, and teachers really like it. It works well with everything we're doing with Google. And I'll be honest with you, it's also free, which is always a huge plus whenever you're trying to figure out. And you can buy now other supplemental tools if you're not paying extensively for a learning management system. There are other free learning management systems as well. But Mr. Miller, I think it might be good to connect with Dr. Downs, and I can help you set that up, because it sounds like you have some great insights about some programs we could look at, because we're always looking to improve.
Thank you. Happy to,
Yep.
happy to talk to anyone.
Mr. Gilberto also reminded me to make sure I said about out-of-state guests, they certainly have to adhere to the travel order if applicable. So obviously it's a great point, to keep that in mind with our out-of-state guests, and I don't want to forget that as well. There's a question about MCAS this year. All indications at this time is that MCAS is on as scheduled. MCAS is federal law and state law. So there would have to be a change to the federal law and the state law in order for it to be taken off the table. Now, taking my administrative hat off, in my heart, do I feel like with everything else going on, do we need testing this year? I don't think so. However, there are other reasons why we have testing for accountability, to make sure that no student slips through the cracks, to make sure no school system slips through the cracks, and that's why the laws are in existence in the country. And I know there's a wide range of feelings about that, but that's why it's there, and those things are not changing. Our MCAS at the secondary level for the students who should have tested as sophomores in the spring is slated for the first of the new year, and I don't think there's going to be enough change and enough time to change that. So my prediction would be that we will see MCAS this year, and we should be thinking about it. And I do feel like our students are going to be well prepared for it as well. More resources for parents who are having to send their kids multiple places during the week. So remote learning assistance is certainly there's so much of a need. We will continue to explore that. It's a very complicated process. I know that we worked, the recreation department in the town, we worked very, very hard to try to find some ways to do it in town. And there were a lot of complications with that, but we do continue to look at that as well. The YMCA program was an alternative we were able to offer, but we will continue to do that. The longer that we're in remote, the longer that we need this, and we want to make sure that that those options are available. The question about the kindergarten students and the Chromebooks and remote learning, this is coming. We have it just about ready to go in draft form. Some classes have seen it, some have not, but we do have a plan about the way this is going to work with kindergarten doing remote. And so this will be coming soon. And quite honestly, it is a fair question to say, why didn't this already exist? Our focus as a district has been on teaching in person and not on remote. And so it really wasn't a question of having that all ready to go. Our focus was on other things. There's just a lot going on. So I think that's just the reality of it. And here we are coming up upon this situation, and we are prepared for that, and we will be prepared for that now. As someone pointed out, yeah, there could have been a snow day, and that might have just been a snow day. We might not have been able to do the remote day in that situation. But now that we're getting into the full winter season, I think we're going to be well prepared. Question about first graders in person with lunch setup. So they're being told they have to face forward. They can't turn around in their seats to talk to others concerned from social wellness. So we certainly will continue to look at that. Those are the guidelines from CDC about forward facing. I think that, I think if you were to address this with the principal, you'd probably find that the students are able to socialize. I've visited all the lunchrooms and all the classrooms. It certainly looks a little different, but the kids are absolutely smiling, socializing, sitting near friends. We've talked about some situations where students were in assigned seats and they weren't able to rotate and sit near friends. That's well on our principal's radar, that they're going to rotate some of those options for kids. And I'm not concerned about the social wellness piece, because I certainly see kids that are laughing, joking, smiling, but at a safe distance during lunch. But if you do have a specific concern, make sure to bring that to the building principal. So the question around first grade coming back in full time, there's certainly more discussion. If we were to bring a whole grade back, it would be first. The biggest challenge we have with that is the space. So we had hoped we were going to be able to do it in the beginning of the year. Essentially, our kindergarten classes are in multiple classrooms, and we're using our teachers and our paraprofessionals to go back and forth so that the students are always with an adult, but in a different space. And we're really just at a limitation of space and of staffing, those two major factors. And it's something that we're looking at as recently as today. I was having this conversation with elementary principals just to see if we're any closer to trying to make that happen. But certainly, for the same reasons that we wanted to bring our kindergarten staff back, we wanted to bring our first graders back as well. So the question is about who's most in need of support during remote learning? What are those students? Is there a plan to prioritize students with IEPs that are having a very hard time to be back full in time? So I just want to reiterate, as Ms. Conant has said many times, we have a team process, and through that team process, parents and students should be advocating for their struggles and their needs. So absolutely, part of identifying students that are quote unquote at risk during remote would be students who have learning disabilities or special education needs. That's certainly, we have prioritized students in specialized programs, but we want to continue that. Also, students that are, at risk of not graduating, students that are otherwise just having a difficult time with remote. These are the students that we're going to look at. I think everybody, and please understand this, every parent here is probably saying, yeah, that's my kid needs to be back, and we all want our kids back. So please understand that when we do this, we can't bring everyone. So we do have to work to prioritize. So again, we are going to try to bring as many students back and to be creative in the ways we do that and make those contacts, because we do really understand that remote is a challenge for a lot of students. Okay, is any other questions? So there's a question here about how we can deal with people at home with young ones, having 3 different places to be during remote and 2 people, needing some help with computers. So we can certainly do more to assist, in general term to help anyone at home. We can do some more parent forums or for anyone who's assisting with kids at home to give them some basics about what those classes look like, what those tools look like. We can certainly do more with that. We did have a parent forum, and we can do more of those. So we can certainly do that, as well as continue to try to make it as simple as possible for what's being assigned. So some questions around socialization during breaks and remote learning days. And I think these are great suggestions. I will be sharing these back. I think we can have a separate conversation just about how to improve what we're currently doing with our programs. So someone's asked me to address Mr. Kavanaugh's question. I think I did. If I didn't, I think that was about the Chromebooks. And yeah, so just to be clear for all kindergarten parents, and I fully understand, especially if you only have a kindergarten parent and haven't seen how this is working. Kindergartners do have Chromebooks. They were trained on Chromebooks. We're going to work with the kindergarten families to figure out what's best, because we can't be sending those devices back and forth every day necessarily with kindergarten. So we're going to try to work with you to figure out what's the best way to interact with students remotely at home. Our kindergarten teachers, we had a meeting on this, and there's going to be a centralized communication out to K families. So this will be coming out very soon. I was informed that full-time was not an option per the district rules. Who prioritizes this? So I think that was explained a little bit earlier. Some smaller meetings just with grade levels. If this means something similar to this, a parent forum, I think that's a great suggestion. If that is a need, you can share that with the principal. If there's a need for something at a level, I'd be happy to participate as well. So some great ideas around, some concerns around social isolation. We're definitely aware of that, and I think that we have to think about some ways to do this. Folks are willing to volunteer. I would say absolutely reach out to the principals and talk about this and make suggestions to the teachers about some volunteering. We have positions advertised that we're still looking to fill. We have some remote learning assistant positions in the schools that we've funded that we're trying to fill. So please, if you're able to volunteer or even apply for some of those positions, we think that would be most helpful if you could get involved, because these are some great ideas and certainly some needs that we have. Parent is saying that the kindergarten parent was in a class that was briefly quarantined. Remote learning went very smoothly, and digital learning staff was very helpful. So we could possibly have a kindergarten only forum, just like we did with reopening, if that is helpful at the end of this week, leading into next week, to get all those questions answered. But it is very helpful to hear that when it had to happen like that, it went very smoothly. So I think that with a few days lead, we're going to be in a good place. I know that doesn't help, and I had a nice conversation with a kindergarten parent who said, I'm going to be anxious. I have anxiety until I see that plan. But that plan will have structured learning where the student is interacting with the teacher throughout the day, and it will have a connection later in the day. It's not going to just end at lunch or something like that. Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate the offers for volunteering, and if I can ever be of help to get something going, but it's very generous for folks to do that as well.
I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just in the mental health field, and I'm very concerned about social isolation at that level. And I did ask, and they said it had to go up to your level because Google Meet needs to be monitored by a staff member.
Sure.
I am happy to assist or to try to help create some solution for at the elementary school level, if it's one Google Meet per grade for remote, something to get those kids interacting with each other.
Sure. No, it's a great idea. And
whatever. I mean, I'm happy to jump on board. I just it pains me to see it.
Yeah, no, it's a great suggestion, and I'd be happy to work with you further. I will say this too for parents to keep in mind. I did send something out, and I want to send this reminder again. We do have a confidentiality form that is sent for whenever someone volunteers in the school, and so we want to make sure that parents are recognizing that as well. Now that basically, whenever we're in your home with the class and with the lessons, that we're maintaining that confidentiality as well. So I think that similar to in my mind, I would want to check this with all of our folks and all of our other administrators, but off the top of my head, I feel like we could view a parent that wanted to assist this way similar to we have chaperones assisting during the day. It's just a little bit different being in remote. So I think we could work on this as an idea with parent volunteers to help to help students that way. I think that's great. There was a lot of feedback from parents saying, how can we work together? Some of us are working 5 jobs and can't help, and others might be able to help. So that might be a way. If you are able to help with some of the remote, I think that's a great idea. So that's a great suggestion moving forward. So someone asked about unused rooms for special subjects using for first grade. So quite honestly, those are the rooms that are being used for kindergarten in many cases. So that's already the space concern. It might not be that way at all 3 schools. Each school is a little bit different, but that's something that I'm concerned with too. I wouldn't want first grade to come back at one school and not all 3. So we're going to make sure that we have enough space across the district as we continue to look at that. But it's a good question. Okay. Is there anything preventing parents from setting up Google Meets for home learners to have lunch together? I think it's a good idea. Let me think on that. Let me circle back with the administrators just to think what that looks like. But the question being, how what would that look like? I mean, I can say there's nothing stopping you from, picking up the phone and calling someone. And so I'm trying to just extend that off the top of my head. Again, I think that is a possibility. We would just want to think about what that looks like. But those kind of ideas are very, very clever and I think worth exploring and at least coming up with a good reason why it couldn't happen. But if it could happen, let's try to make it so. I think that's a great suggestion. So yeah, if anyone has any issues with communication, feel free to bring it to the principal or to me with the principal. We're all going to work together to solve the problem together. Okay, so someone's saying that they have a hub that connects them in the Salem Public Schools that provides some socialization opportunities. So possibly, Ms. Lucci, we could use that to as a model for us here. So some thank yous here, which is helpful, and they appreciate what the teachers are doing here and the work that's gone into it, and some hard work of everyone getting some thanks here at the end. Mr. Kane, our union president, is sharing, thank you for realizing the shared responsibilities and that we're all working towards the best interest of the community, our students, and your children in these unprecedented times. And if I haven't done so already, let me thank Mr. Kane specifically for his unbelievable amount of time that he and I have just spent on the phone and in meetings to make all of this possible this year. Again, it's not perfect. It's far from it, but it's the best. I believe it's really the best it could possibly be given the situation we're in. Yep, and someone's throwing out smaller classes, split shifts for teachers, school till 6 p.m. outside the box. There are huge costs to any kind of increases, or if we had more teachers, we certainly could do something different. But there's obviously a substantial cost to having people work double shifts or hiring a second set of teachers to come in the afternoon. But they are good ideas. Is there a place where all emails are listed? On our website, you can click on staff directories and you should be able to click on people's emails. And if you have trouble figuring that out, the principal or the digital learning team can certainly support you. All right, so I'm seeing a couple of happy Thanksgivings. I feel like we had a pretty comprehensive presentation tonight that I believe answered hopefully a lot of the questions that I saw. I will be sharing out something more about the December just to get some parent feedback on that initial thought but I do see it as again, parents shared that idea and I thought it was fantastic, and I'm bringing it forward to everyone to try to cut back on the number of days out in December and try to centralize it and kind of solve two problems with one solution. So we will be discussing that a little bit more at our meeting on Thursday, and I will share something out with parents between now and then to gauge some initial feedback on the thought. I'm sharing that with the teaching staff as well. Okay. All right, folks. So I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. So again, thank you so much for everything. We certainly will do this again if it's well received. And I think the numbers that attended certainly speak to that there was a need for some communication. There's a lot going on out there in the world, and I really appreciate. Thank you for all that you do every single day with our students. Our kids are amazing, and please, my sincere thank you for everything you do every single day. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.